From the Banner offices along the Inner Harbor, it is the Banner Baseball Show. Paul Mancano and John Meoli here with you on a Thursday in January, the very first day of the new international signing period. Orioles are going to have a lot new names enter their organization that we will probably find out about in a giant press release at some point later today. But John, we are in the middle of the offseason. We are a month away from spring training. We are kind of in the doldrums of the offseason. I think you could say things have slowed down considerably on the Orioles side of things. We haven't gotten a bit of big Orioles news in quite a while.
Yeah, and I mean,
to be expected.
And as we mentioned last week, thank goodness they did what they did in December.
Yes.
Because there are fan bases, the Red Sox fans are happier today than they were on Monday, but this is the part of the offseason where if you still have big moves left to make, and the Orioles do, they still have a spot in the top half of the rotation. But if you have needs and the obvious candidates to fill those needs get signed in January, and your fans have expectations that you are going to fill it with that player, it is a bad time.
Yes.
and I think that the nicest thing about this offseason is that it's not really a bad time now. Is there going to be criticism if their major work is done? Sure. Is that going to be fair? To an extent. But it's not a bad time right now.
Well, and even with the rotation, you talked about when the Orioles traded for Shane Baz and then signed Zach Eflin. Absolutely, both of us will stand up here and say they need to add at least one more arm to that rotation. I think probably one at this point. And it has to be somebody who you feel comfortable throwing out there early in the rotation as well. But because they gave themselves kind of a floor, it feels like they don't have their backs up against the wall. So when Ranger Suárez gets signed by the Boston Red Sox, a lot of fans saw that and were panicking and thinking, well, there's really only one guy left and it's Framber Valdez. And sure, that's true. But if it's Framber Valdez, if it's another trade piece, you still have done something for your rotation. It's not like that guy is going to be relied upon to be the savior of this rotation. You still traded for Shane Baz. You still signed Zach Eflin. There are already a couple pieces in there there are a couple moves you've already made this offseason when it comes to the rotation.
Yeah. And I think, I think my preference has always been Framber Valdez. So I didn't really sweat the Ranger Suárez thing. I think there's an argument that he was somebody who, Framber Valdez gets the Astros to the playoffs by just going out there and throwing 6+ and having guys hit it into the ground, and just, at his worst, he is still will be one of your best. Whereas Ranger Suárez has been fantastic in the playoffs, but it was never his job to get the Phillies to the playoffs. That was somebody else's job. That was a couple other guys' job, and they did a really good job at it. Once he got there, game 3, Ranger Suárez, let's go.
A dog.
Yeah. So I'm not really sweating that.
5 years, $130 million for Ranger Suárez.
And given the reporting, that these guys were looking at 7 years, and they're probably looking at similar markets. I think that I think the Orioles are probably more willing to go to a higher number for 4 or 5 years, like they offered for Corbin Burns, than to go 7 for a starting pitcher, because as much as things have changed around here, as different as things are, I don't think there's a ton of appetite for 7-year starting pitching contracts to guys in their 30s. Period.
Yep.
And that's not an Orioles thing. That's not Mike Elias. That's not, is this team really going to spend money? They're just saying stuff. None of the stuff that you would normally say when somebody tells you that the Orioles would not want to do something applies. That's just what you should think.
Yeah. And Ranger Suárez has had injury concerns in his past. He's had back issues, and that can be something that can be tricky for a pitcher as he gets into his mid to late 30s.
He should get an acupressure mat.
Yes. Which you got yourself for Christmas, and still working well for you?
Yeah, I don't do it as frequently as I want to, but last night I did it and it was really nice.
Nice. That could fix Ranger Suárez. Maybe the Red Sox should listen to John Meoli's medical advice. All right, we are going to have Yahoo Sports' Jake Mintz on in just a little bit talk. Our guy. Let's be clear. Our guy.
Do you know? We'll just talk about our podcast origin story with him on there. But teaser alert. Yeah, I was on a single-digit episode of the Cespedes Family Barbecue podcast as a guest of a guest, and that's all I'm going to say because there's no need to explain it twice.
You guys go way back.
Way back.
So we're going to have him on to talk a kind of bigger picture when it comes to this Orioles offseason, where they fit in the AL East. But a couple quick news and notes to get to for the Orioles. The arbitration filing deadline has passed. The Orioles came to terms with all of their arbitration eligible players except for Keegan Aiken and Kyle Bradish. Honestly, not a big deal for people that don't kind of know the process. The Orioles typically, they say they have a file and go policy, which means they have their number that they're set at. And once that filing deadline passes, they don't negotiate with the players. Elias says that every year, and then they break it every year. So there's a chance that the Orioles come to terms with either Aiken or Bradish before they get to the time where they would need to get in front of an independent arbiter.
Yeah, and I will say, not to interrupt because I know we're trying to go fast, but I think your former colleague Rockabacco at MASN in one of his blogs wrote that the Orioles do deviate from that if there is an option involved for the next year.
Yeah,
so
a team option.
Some kind of
mutual option.
Yeah, and I think it was The Athletic, and we're going to talk a little bit about Ryan Mountcastle, and I'll just go to it. I think The Athletic reported that part of the reason why Ryan Mountcastle's arbitration deal, he basically renewed at the same rate as last year. He didn't get an arbitration raise, but that includes, because it includes an option, it can't get counted against future. It can't be like a precedent in future arbitration cases for other players. I'm sure that's important to players, and I'm sure if the Orioles get a deal that they want, they don't really care that that's the case. They're willing to pay people what they think they're worth. That's always been the case. So an interesting kind of set of circumstances. I don't imagine there'd be any issue, but I thank heaven that we're not in the era of Orioles baseball when going to arbitration with a baseball player, which is a thing that just happens, is not considered like the worst thing that they've ever done in the history of the world.
Yes. I mean, I think a lot of Tigers fans are looking at the Tarek Skubal negotiations where the team and the player are $13 million apart, and Skubal's entering his final year under team control, and they're tearing their hair out because that is going to be an awfully hard thing to reconcile there.
Yeah.
And it is good that the Orioles get a lot of these deals done with Adley Rutschman and Gunnar Henderson. And not like every time they go to arbitration, there's acrimony on the player side, but it can lead to that. And you just kind of want to avoid it if you can.
And they renewed those guys. There were a couple of years where they renewed, like before arbitration, you are going to be under contract. You are going to get paid a very narrow salary range,
right?
And you can either agree to a contract, or a team can just basically renew you because you don't agree. And I don't know if that's like a sign of protest or not interested in having that conversation or don't like the conversation. But those guys in the past had been renewed, which is kind of interesting. And I think I know that we hear all the time that the Orioles are talking to agents about these players constantly, but this is a time when they actually are. And you hope that just reaching agreements and not having it be a huge deal could maybe lead to more.
Yeah. And you mentioned the the team option that the Orioles added to Ryan Mountcastle's deal. So Mountcastle obviously entering the final year of his team control in 2026. The Orioles added a team option for 2027. So that maybe makes him 5% more tradable in a deal that a team who's acquiring him can say, all right, well, if he's really good for us, we can just pick him up at about $7 million for 2027 and have him for 2 years.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really change dramatically, his status on this roster right now.
And you know who that's great for? Ryan Mountcastle.
It's great for Ryan Mountcastle.
Ryan Mountcastle, for right first base slugger, who's had up and down performances, health issues, entering free agency ahead of a lockout. There is, I don't want to say 1,000% chance because that would mean that it would be true, but there is 1,000% chance that if there's not this team option and the potential for Ryan Mountcastle to be under contract, that he is probably sitting around right now next year and into a lockout offseason wondering where he's going to live, where he's going to play baseball, what his future is going to be like. There is a pretty decent chance that type of player doesn't have a huge market, and set yourself up for success. And I think that's doing it. He doesn't have to worry about what's going to happen. He can play a little freer this year. And if he has a good year and the club option gets picked up by the Orioles, by someone else, then you have another good year, and then you're in free agency in a new financial system, and you're still young and everything's fine.
Yeah, and you know where you're going to play on November 10th.
Yes.
Like you have it figured out. All right, real quick, let's run through, we don't have the list of guys that the Orioles are going to sign in the international free agency period. And we are going to hear a lot of names today that are going to immediately fly out of fans' brains tomorrow. And they're not going to hear these guys' names for years down the line. The Orioles obviously have bolstered their international presence a whole heck of a lot since Mike Elias took over, and really over the last 3-4 years, with Kobe Perez finally getting that machine up and running. They have the facility now in the Dominican Republic. Samuel Basallo is the GM of the Orioles international free agency over the last several years, but there are other guys that are in the minors right now. And John, you cover the minors pretty extensively. You come up with your top 30 for Baseball America. Esteban Mejia is a 2024 international signee. Steven Martinez, a 2024 international signee. Left-hander Luis De Leon, a 2021 international signee. So these guys are, Cesar Prieto was a trade piece. He was a signee out of Cuba. So there are guys throughout the system that haven't reached the big leagues yet, but could make an impact on this team down the line.
Yes. And I would add Aaron Estrada into that mix. He's somebody that I've caught a lot of flack for inside the organization for not having in the top 10. I've told everyone that I wanted to. There's just numbers, and I think he's close to being in it now that they've made some trades. So, all's well. It's insane to say this because Kobe Perez was hired in January of 2019. This class that they're signing right now on January 15th, 2026 is basically the first class that they were fully operational and participating in for. And it shows. They have 4 7-figure bonuses. They'd only signed 6 ever in franchise history before that. Those are all hitters. They also have a pitcher who they believe is the best pitcher in the entire class. He's like a lefty with in the mid 90s who has a really good slider and is clean delivery and they made that agreement when he was throwing 89 and that's just the scouting win. But the way that the market works down there is teams start really seriously scouting and being connected to and in a lot of cases making agreements with these guys when they're 12, 13, 14 years old. So as the Orioles were building out their scouting department, Kobe Perez made a couple of hires. Everything I'm saying right now is going to be in a fantastic column on the BaltimoreBanner.com. Hopefully at some point in the calendar year 2026.
Where you can subscribe $1 for 6 months.
Yes. He staffs up with people that he knows and respects around that industry. And they spend a couple years. First they have to convince people that the Orioles are actually going to participate in this market. He and Mike Elias went around and convinced agents that yes, the agreements would go through, the bonuses would get paid, all things that people down there worried about. And then as they're building up these relationships, they spent through 2-3 years, basically half looking at the future and half backfilling the classes that had already been agreed to by everybody else, picking up late bloomers, guys like Aaron Estrada, who nobody had bonus space for, nobody had room for. So it was really in 2023 when this class was 13 years old, which is insane to say, 13, 14 years old, 2023, when they're fully staffed up. They're not worrying about backfilling past classes. They're still doing some of that, and they're still working on the 23, 24 classes where they can. But this was the first one where they could really say, these are the players. This is the landscape. This is how much money we're going to have. Let's do this the way that I don't want to say 29 because I don't know about, but I'm sure let's do this the way that 3/4 of the league who's doing this well does it. Let's identify our guys. Let's lock them in. And they're not signing a huge class. They've signed huge classes in the past. I think there's 10 guys in this class, but there's 4 7-figure bonuses. There's a really high-end pitcher. And we're talking about, the kind of class that can make a huge difference down the line. These are guys that are well regarded and have talent, and that's going to make them trade pieces. It's going to make them guys who climb up prospect list quickly if they get to the point where this pans out. I mean, I was told that this pitcher is going to be the best pitching prospect in the organization by the time he gets stateside. I choose to believe that. I just think that it's crazy it speaks to the system and in place and kind of how this can be true, that somebody can be basically in the job for 7 years and you're finally seeing the fruits of them doing their job fully for the first time. Kobe Perez and his group have done a great job in the circumstances they're at. And now we're talking about them getting to be part of the ecosystem as a whole. And this is not going to change in the 2027 signing class. They're going to be full participants and do the same types of things, 28. And this is just kind of the baseline now, but this is a big class, and this kind of speaks to what it takes to get it done. And I hope everybody reads the column.
Are you talking about Andre Hidalgo?
Yes.
Left-handed pitcher, 16 years old. MLB Pipeline has him ranked as the 25th international prospect in this free agency period.
Yeah.
Fastball 60, slider 60, changeup 45, control 50, overall 50.
Yeah.
He is 6'4", 180 pounds at 16 years old.
Yeah. And I mean, he's going to be bigger. Yeah. He's going to get bigger. And that is, and I think I know that it's going to be a moment of relief. I'm sure they're being signed literally as we speak, these contracts, but like when you agree with somebody like that, several months, years, whatever before today, when they're like, I'm sure there are teams that are trying to go over the top of what the Orioles have agreed to sign him for, because that's significant stuff. And this class that we're talking about is one that, I assume some of these guys will get directly inserted into Baseball America's top 30. And I believe that would be justified. And I think it'll be fascinating to see how the industry reacts to the Orioles putting together a class like this, because it seems like it's the real deal.
Yeah. All right, let's get to our terrific guest, Jake Mintz. And now we're joined by Jake Mintz of Yahoo Sports. He is a writer over there. He is a podcaster with the Baseball Barbercast with Jordan Schusterman. He is, of course, half of Cespedes Family Barbecue. Thank you so much for joining us, Jake. You go back a ways with me, but you go way, way back with John. Is that right?
Yeah, John Meoli knew me before I could legally buy a pack of cigarettes. We'll leave it at that.
Yeah. I was a guest of a guest. You were talking to somebody who was in the press box at the Wilmington Blue Rocks game, and probably like whenever you started your Cespedes Family Barbecue podcast, and I
episode 3.
Episode 3.
Wow. The third podcast episode I ever did in August of 2012. We had a mutual friend who is now a professional scout a professional amateur scout for a major league professional baseball team. And we were interviewing him, and he was like, "I'm next to John Meoli." And I was like, "John Meoli? The John Meoli?" And
that's right.
That's how it began, man.
I do that every time I see John. I'm just starstruck. We obviously had to get you on here because you have a lot of thoughts about baseball in general, about MLB in general.
So they pay me for.
Yeah, and you do care about the Orioles more than most, I think you could say.
I am a DMV resident. Okay.
There it is. Yeah.
I grew up in the area. My entire mother's side of the family is from Baltimore. I grew up an enormous Orioles fan. As the years have flicked by, and this has become the way I pay my rent, the more irrational aspects of one's fandom do start to peel away. And it's not like an active process. It's just that, like, when you see the entirety of the league, I'm like, these 26 people are not better than the 26 people in Miami or Kansas City or whatever, right? And so then you're just rooting for the laundry in the city and for the people you like to be happy, which is fine, which is great. Now, when the Orioles win a World Series one day, it will mean more to me than if the Reds do, right? And so just balancing all those things, the way I always say is I am someone who cares particularly about the Baltimore Orioles as an institution.
Yeah, and honestly, I wasn't even prepared to ask this, but now I'm curious, because you are a DMV resident. You've been to Nationals Park a good amount. You've been attuned to the MASN drama over the years. The breakup is real. The Nationals are leaving MASN and going to the MLB's in-house model. How do you feel about the fact that this 20-year loveless marriage is finally over?
It ended with something of a whimper, though.
Yeah.
They just quietly sent the divorce papers in.
Think about how much energy was spent to like MASN drama over the last 2 decades.
Thank you.
Like, John, how many articles did you write about MASN? over the last 2 decades.
My God, if it's not, it's dozens. It's not 100, but it's dozens. And what, as Paul's bringing this up, I think you said it well, and I'm going to say it in a slightly different way. Like, so much energy we spent over it. Did anyone enjoy even a half a second of that?
No.
Did anyone enjoy a half second of like rights fees talks and lawyers briefs? And
this is how business reporters must feel all the time.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
you're like, did anybody enjoy that, brother? We read about ball.
Yeah, like, and you know when it would always happen? At a time when you weren't like doing something, like when you weren't working. It'd be like a random like Friday in the off season, or like, hey, there was some court filings. Can you call this lawyer? And it's like, I can't. I really don't want to. Like, it's like Bad Santa when I'm on my lunch break. The kid, like, that was me. That was me all the time. Like, anytime I heard MASN, and I was also like, this is way too inside baseball, but like, I didn't want to do it, but I wanted to know it was being done. And I would get irrationally mad when I would see these like stories at the outlets that I worked at about the MASN drama that I didn't know were happening. And I was just like, what the heck's going on here? Like,
why call me?
Yeah, I didn't want to do it, but I want to know about it. It's like, I'm not going to your party, but I need to be invited.
And as a former MASN employee, we just pretended none of it existed. And that was the way that we got through all of that.
Yeah.
That's how sports media works, baby. Look, I mean, being a DMV resident now, last couple months, MASN is probably like not in the top 700 things that have been interesting in my life. Being upfront with you, seeing you two gentlemen on a regular basis, that is cool. I like that. Being around
that's
the
higher up
is way high.
That's $6.99 for you. Yeah.
MASN drama, dude. Like, come on now.
No, it's terrible. All right. Well, let's talk about one of the hopefully top 50 most interesting things in your life over the last few months, and that's Pete Alonso signing with the Baltimore Orioles on a 5-year deal. You were there at the introductory press conference, Jake. You have seen this team go through a lot over the last several decades. What does it mean to the Baltimore Orioles franchise to land somebody like Pete Alonso, who is not just a high price free agent, but is a big name?
It's big boy activity. Like, it's a real deal. Do you guys see Succession?
Yeah,
of course.
There's a scene in Succession where the big man says to his kids, "I love you, but you are not serious people."
Yes.
And I think
I use that with my roommates all the time.
Yeah, the Baltimore Orioles for the last 2 decades, we loved them, but in some ways, but they were not serious people. You know what I mean? As it pertains to the free agent market. And that is different now. I think that for most of that, like when you dial the clock back to like 2002, 2003, and they were like signing Javi Lopez and Tejada and Sammy Sosa, like that is a different era of life and earth and baseball. But within the modern context, right, like they just didn't participate in that. The biggest outlay was for Chris Davis, who I guess was technically a free agent, but it didn't feel that way at the time, right? Because he had already been on the team for a while. And so for them to go out and get Alonso, I mean, it's a declaration of intent, man. Like, and within the context of the Rubenstein era, where this guy showed up and everyone thought he was going to be like the Steve Cohen style baseball sugar daddy, and then it like took a year, right? Because whether last offseason it was Elias saying, "Thank you for the funds that you're allocating, I'm going to do this a different way," or whether it was Rubenstein kind of holding back a little bit in terms of what the budget was, we don't know. I don't know. Maybe you guys know. If you do, text me. But I think that has now definitively changed, right? And I think the Baltimore Orioles are a mid-market team. They're not a small market team under David Rubenstein. And that is true in terms of all aspects of the organization, right? We see it the most in terms of free agency, and that's important because it is so public facing. But it is true in terms of the way that they've approached the international market, right? Today's January 15th. They're spending money in that. They're participating in that. They're a real big boy team. And I think that like the Alonso thing is just the easiest way that manifests. And it is very important. But this is like, it's not necessarily like a surprise, or it should not be a surprise. It is important, but it's not a surprise.
Yeah. And I think when you talk about, I don't need to text you, I'll just talk about last offseason, what happened. Like, I think they thought they could just show up at the party with a bunch of money and everyone's going to want to take it. If we did a Family Feud style board of like, what are the reasons why free agents sign, and we pull 100 big leaguers, the number one answer is going to be who gives me the most money. The number two answer might be, where is that team? Number three is like, are they committed to competing? All those things can stack up however much you want, but the Orioles signed Pete Alonso because they offered him the most money. Yes, he had a wonderful experience with Craig Albernaz in a hotel room in Florida, which sounds a little different than I meant to, but like they had an awesome time hanging out, and like Scott Boras said, something magical happened in that meeting, and Craig Albernaz did his thing, and
everybody else left the room.
No,
just the two of them.
No, I mean, the Orioles pitched him really well. I imagine they're very good at pitching people. They're probably really convincing. They also offered him more money.
They're good at pitching people.
I am just.
They weren't good at pitching.
I would like none of the words that I've said in the order I've said them to be taken seriously over the last like 35 seconds. They offered him the most money, and that's it. And like, but that's awesome. That's just objectively how you do this. So all the free agents who are signing since Pete Alonso, I would venture to say, when I say most money, that the best contract offer they received is the team that they signed with.
Right.
And that is something that the Orioles, I don't think, were willing to do last year in a way that they were for Pete Alonso. I think they were in the mix and they wanted to be in the mix. And then when it came time for final offers, some guys didn't even ask the Orioles for final offers. They just wanted to go play other places. I don't know why that would be, but other guys got the Orioles offer and they took a better one. There was no better offer than what Pete Alonso got from the Baltimore Orioles. And that is that is growth. That is different from last year. That is how you operate when you have the ability to do that.
As fans / prognosticators, I mean, it applies to both groups. We want free agency to mean more than the money sometimes, right? We want there to be this magical, Craig Albernaz meeting, and for the player to be like, I believe in that guy or that group or that place. That's just not how it goes 99% of the time, right? It's less interesting, but it is how it happens, right? There are only very few Zach Wheelers where it's like, I'm going to take less money because my wife's family is near Philadelphia and I don't want to go play for the White Sox, right?
Corbin Burns going to Arizona.
That is a very rare dynamic. But the reality of it is who offers the most money or who offers the best deal. And I think that the Orioles learned that and they made an adjustment. I think so much of what happened over the last year with the Orioles was like, they made mistakes. Can they learn from those mistakes and adjust their behavior accordingly? Right. Yeah. That to me is like the theme of the 2026 Orioles in a way, because up to that point, everything Mike Elias and co had done was just like a smashing success. The playoffs aside, but that's just, in my opinion, something of a roulette wheel. They failed for the first time in their plan.
Yeah.
Can they adjust? And this offseason, in my opinion, has been a pretty resounding yes. Can they adjust the way that they're operating? That I think also applies to the way that they went out and got Shane Baz, where the Elias regime has been so hesitant to part with prospects. And for them to be like, yeah, sure, take like our whole draft.
Yeah. You like these guys? Sure, take them. And
hey,
like,
whatever. We don't know them. We just got them.
Yeah, sure. If you'd like them, fine. I'm gonna miss Michael Frett, but those are two things you mentioned. They also traded Grayson Rodriguez, 4 years of Grayson Rodriguez, whatever those 4 years are, for Taylor Ward, 1 year of Taylor Ward. They also signed like a real like free agent closer. They've also, I think that's actually it. Those are all the things.
Traded for Andrew Kittredge.
Yeah, sure. But like
whatever.
They've basically they've basically taken like a lot of the things that were tentpoles of what they've done, intentionally, unintentionally, and like chop them down. And now they have to like
coming down, dude.
The tent is coming down, and now they have to put it up with different ones. And they're better. But like, are there any of those, as you're saying this, and I'm thinking like, are there any of those things that they've done that are complete 180s that gave you pause, you're like, wait a second, this isn't what they want to be doing. Like, this isn't the Orioles? Because I've had that moment a couple times. Like, I still don't even know. I was talking to someone recently about the Grayson Rodriguez trade, and like, it was basically just like, 15 minutes of being like, I don't know. It was incredibly useless conversation from the person who was hearing me talk about it. Like
analyzing the Grayson trade is impossible because it just all comes down to like how healthy is he over the next 4 years, and if there's a God, that's the only person that knows that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so like the rest of it is just I don't know.
Right. I think the idea is like the Orioles are actually willing to step into the uncertainty. Like they've been betting on so many, I'd say sure things, but like, you sign Charlie Morton, you expect a certain thing from him. You sign Tomoyuki Sugano and he fits your model. You're not as willing to step into the uncertainties. And this is, the Grayson Rodriguez deal was like the first one where it's like, they're like, we might be wrong. We might be totally wrong about this, but we're doing it.
Yeah. And there's no way that if Grayson Rodriguez pitches for any meaningful amount of time in the next 4 years, the output will make the trade look bad for the Baltimore Orioles. Yeah. And that's a tough, it could be 3 years from now and Grayson Rodriguez could finally be healthy and give the Angels like 140 innings of really good pitching. And that'll still look bad for the Baltimore Orioles. But
or he could be on the, Kiwoom Heroes.
Right.
Like you just don't know. And I think that is the Boz one to me is even more of a leap because you're not trading for the pitcher that he is, you're trading for the pitcher you think that he can become. Right.
Right.
And I love that mindset because it's basically like if you trust your pitching dev and they've done some really good stuff at the minor league level, right? Like that hasn't quite percolated up yet. If you trust that apparatus, let it eat, man. Let it fly. Yeah. Right. And I think that is a very interesting way to do business. And Boz is about as compelling of a character to try and do that with. It is a new thing that they are attempting to do. And I think that that's admirable because like I said before, it is a legitimate pivot to what they have done in the past. And I think for fans, that is refreshing, right? Now, it all will be judged on whether or not it works, right? Whether you win or you lose in the same way that like the money talks during the offseason, the win column talks during the regular season. And if it all goes up in smoke, we will not be sitting here on November 15th, 2026 being like, man, those were savvy moves, but they won 68 games, still right now from where we sit. And that's all we can analyze from where we sit. I think this has been a very strong offseason for the Orioles.
Yeah. Well, let's put the Orioles offseason in context of the larger AL East because Red Sox lose out on Alex Bregman, but they do sign Ranger Suárez, which leaves.
Don't put it in the newspaper that I panicked. Okay?
Yeah, we were gonna do this anyways.
We swear.
This okay. So they signed Ranger Suárez. Let's just talk about this.
Yes.
One of my favorite baseball things is when a team has to do a plan B, and everyone knows it's a plan B, and that's okay. Like plan Bs are great. They're not plan Ls. They're plan Bs. Okay. Last year, the Yankees Juan Soto plan B worked out pretty great, right?
Yeah.
But then they have to pretend that the plan B was always the plan A, when the whole world knows that's not the case, right?
Yeah.
Like the Ranger Suárez Red Sox press conference are going to be like, this is a guy that we always had our eye on, and we were interested from the jump, and this is great. Where everyone in the world is like, man, if you're plan A unfurled, you would not be here right now. Like you would have Alex Bregman and not Ranger.
Yeah. Yeah. In terms of how that changes the Red Sox team, obviously there's also so many dominoes yet to fall. Obviously, Cody Bellinger has yet to sign. The Yankees are still going to do something, whether it's Bellinger or somebody else. Kyle Tucker has yet to sign. Blue Jays have been with the Orioles as one of the more active teams this offseason so far. When you're looking at the Orioles in context of the AL East, if you were to look at their roster right now on paper, where would you stack the Orioles up with some of those other teams?
So let's take the Tampa Bay. This is a dangerous thing I'm about to say.
Yeah, be careful.
Really dangerous, okay?
Yeah.
Let's take the Tampa Bay Rays, and I'm just going to push them to the side because I think they're worse definitively than the other four teams.
I feel like I do that every year, and it always backfires. But
I mean, last year this
might
close,
be the year to do it.
But I think this is the year I'm going to do that. Now, I could be wrong. But I'm going to do it this year. I think the Blue Jays are undeniably a better roster than the Orioles. I also think we can push them to the side over the Orioles. That doesn't mean the Orioles won't win the division. I just say, like, when you look at it on paper right now, they were 2 outs away from winning a World Series, and I think they've gotten better.
Yeah.
Right. And so, how many people in the world think the Orioles roster is better than the Blue Jays? Most of them work at Camden Yards in the warehouse, and that's fine, right? That's what you should be doing. And so that leaves the Yankees and the Red Sox. The way that the Red Sox are currently constructed makes no sense at all. None of the pieces fit together. It's a puzzle with just like the end pieces and nothing. It just doesn't work, right? Like their best outfield defender is like slated to play second base. They don't have anybody like to. It doesn't make. They need to trade like Willie Abreu for Isaac Paredes or something, right? And if they do that between now and opening day, then we can reconsider this conversation because I do like some of the moves they made with Sonny Gray and Wilson Contreras and whatever. But like, are the Boston Red Sox better right now than they were when they lost to the Yankees in the wild card round? I don't think so. I think Alex Bregman is that important. Now, if they simplify some of the way that the dominoes fall, like the positional dominoes, I'm willing to put them on par with the Orioles. But for now, I have them a tick behind. But boy, I just think the one thing I'll say about the Red Sox, we have just kind of not talked about how unreal Garrett Crochet is.
Yeah.
Like all this Red Sox drama of them being goofy has just overshadowed that they nailed. There's a top 3 pitcher in the world. Right?
Yeah, they
He's
crushed
a top
that
3 pitcher in
trade.
the world. And they crushed that. Let's do the Yankees. Weird. Weird. The Yankees, I think, are probably better than the Orioles, and that is because they employ this gentleman named Aaron Judge. And if Aaron Judge plays 160 games, I think the Yankees are really good. Now, if Aaron Judge ages or, stubs his toe again, which he did do that one time, like then that dynamic changes. The biggest thing with the Yankees and what I think will define their season is when do the hurt pitchers come back? And that is Carlos Rodon, and that is Garrett Cole, and that is Clark Schmidt to an extent. When do those guys come back, and how much are they themselves when they do come back, right? How much does Cam Schlittler carry over what he did last year? Does the Ryan Weathers deal like hit? Is Luis Gil gonna really put it all together? I think their pitching is the thing. They've always been good at preventing runs, but with Devin Williams and Luke Weaver out the door in the bullpen, the run prevention side for them is what I'm a little concerned about. But it's tough to evaluate kind of where the Yankees are at before we figure out what's going to happen with Cody Bellinger.
Right.
And whether they bring him back, and if they don't bring him back, what their pivot is from that. I promise you it's my plan A is after that. So I would say the Orioles are like our third in my mind right now.
Okay.
Yeah. And even acknowledging that, you probably were sitting near me in the space formerly known as Nipsey's Brew Pub and Grill in the warehouse when Michael Elias basically said he wants this offseason to be one where people who are doing what we are doing and working the game and around the game can look at the Orioles and say that's a team that can win the AL East. No one's work is done, I don't think, unless maybe the Rays are done with their big additions after signing Cedric Mullins early in free agency. Do you think that the Orioles have satisfied that? Do you think that you can see yourself in the beginning of February being like, this is a team that can win that division?
Yes, this team can win the division. Absolutely.
Even without a top line starting pitcher?
Yeah. Now, you can win a division without a frontline starting pitcher. I don't know if you can win a playoff series without a frontline starting pitcher. Right?
Yeah.
You can win a division. I think, and like that's a whole different conversation. But yeah, the Orioles can win 95 games with the team that they have right now. Absolutely. Like that's not out of the realm of possibility. Is it likely they win the division? Probably not. I just think the Jays mean business, bro. Like the Jays mean business, dude.
They're doing it.
I'm so happy that this is a dumb sense. I'm so happy I got to go to the World Series. Just to see the way that franchise is like moving right now, because it is for the last 2 decades, the Jays were just like this weird stepchild in the division where like sometimes they were a big market team and then sometimes they weren't. They're fully operational now. And I think that that's a really important dynamic. And it's convenient that it might coincide with the Rays like taking a half step back. So
yeah. Well, when you look at the Orioles rotation, I mean, we are just never going to say the Orioles have enough pitching just because of how we saw it last year go and maybe the year before. But you take Ranger Suárez off the board. He was one of the two lefties that a lot of Orioles fans are eyeing. Framber Valdez is kind of the next guy up. Is it Framber Valdez or bust if the Orioles are trying to add somebody who can fit in with the Trevor Rogers at the top of the rotation to you?
No. Very rarely, for me, it's very rarely or bust. Because I just think that there are so many different things you can do, right? Like, okay, so let's say they miss out on him. You just go trade for Mackenzie Gore. You know?
Sure.
Like, I would probably rather have Mackenzie Gore based upon age and potential than Framber, I think. And the money. Like, I don't know if I'm willing to get into the Framber Valdez business. Again, it's not my money, and money in free agency only matters as far as what it allows or prohibits you from doing.
You brought that up on the podcast, and I think it's a great point.
Dude. It's the whole thing, because it's like, it's not my money. Like, you can do a value proposition, you can do a value model, be like, oh, is this deal worth it?
Right.
Okay, like, are we doing that for the Dodgers? No, because they're just going to keep spending more money. Like, the money doesn't, it's not real. It doesn't matter. So, like, if the Orioles go out and sign Framber and like that deal's really bad, well, it's only a bad deal if it prohibits them from signing someone in 2 years, right? Or if he sucks, I guess is the other way. It's a bad deal. But no, I don't think it is Framber or bust. I think there are a lot of other ways that they can get better. And I also think they can enter the season with this rotation and it wouldn't be an embarrassment. I mean, I think last year it turned out to be an embarrassment. They didn't have as many sure things. I think that is the case again. There are questions with all these guys. Can Rogers do that again? How healthy is Bradish? Does Boz take the steps forward? What the heck is Zach Eflin, right? At this point, I think that's all really fair. You know, Dean Kremer is going to throw to a 4.24.
Yep. I think that's literally his career average. So
let's see if I nailed it. I mean, but like, and that's fine. Like, you don't need every guy to be that guy. And if they're in the mix in the middle of at the deadline, then go out and trade for a dude, right? So I really don't think, because they went out and signed Pete and they traded for Boz, I don't think it's like panic stations right now. And I know maybe I'm painting something of a rosy picture here, but like, let me just be clear. People are always like, oh, because you grew up caring about the Orioles, do you like worry that you're biased towards them? And in my mind, it's the opposite in a way, where it's like, I'm like parenting my kid on the sports team. Like, I'm going to be harder on my kid, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to make them do extra laps and like, they're going to have to work for it extra hard. And so like, I have been pretty critical of the Orioles over the years. And I think that being said, based upon what they've done this winter, I feel pretty good.
You're going to make Mike Elias walk home if they lose that football game.
Oh, he will.
Yeah.
He will walk.
Dead silence, no radio. 4.26 ERA for Dean Kremer, so fantastic.
Wow, great.
That was a real thing that we used to do when we would lose games in college. Like if we had a road game, we weren't allowed to talk on the bus on the way back.
Literally the Moneyball scene.
Yeah, we were not allowed.
Fun.
We literally didn't talk on the bus. Like,
yeah,
it was so freaking funny. And then. I was recently in the Dominican with Jordan Schusterman, my podcast co-host, and two of my other friends who were watching Winter Ball. And we took a bus from like one of the second biggest city to the capital in the Dominican, like a coach bus. And I was like, hey, no talking. We lost. Like shushing strangers on the mega bus.
How'd that go?
Not great.
Yeah. That would have been my guess. Yeah. And I think to your point though, like, we've talked about this on this podcast a couple times this year because the Orioles have been quiet for a while and there's not a lot to talk about, but it's only a huge deal if they don't sign Framber Valdez or if they don't land one of the guys who are the top pitchers, if they hadn't done what they've done already. All these teams who are making these moves now, and, you know, it's a zero-sum game. Like, if you need a pitcher and like desperately and you haven't done anything all offseason and Framber Valdez signs, that's bad for your team and your fans are going to be mad. If you have traded for Shane Baz and got the Zach Eflin backup plan that could go in any number of directions, and you still have the optionality to make a trade or sign somebody, you don't need to do that. It doesn't feel as bad. And that's not letting them off the hook. That's just the truth.
Yeah. There's also this dynamic that the chronology of the offseason warps our brains while we're in it. Where what you really need to do, and this is just because we all get paid money to like evaluate this sport, and so we're doing it as we can in the moment.
Yeah.
But if you really wanted to do this intelligently, you would just wait until opening day, right? You'd be like, here is everything that this team did. Here is
Just take
everything
it in
that this
bulk.
team did, and you just take it in bulk because, like, you know, right now, I think you can be really critical of the Yankees offseason. Okay, well, if they go out and sign Cody Bellinger and Framber Valdez and, trade for Mike Trout or, Shohei Ohtani, that's not happening.
Yeah.
But then you would evaluate it differently, and all of the angst and, frustration that a fan base feels would evaporate, right? And so I just think the Orioles have done more business in the front end of the offseason than they usually do. They have done more business in the front end of the offseason than most teams have done. And as a result, now as we're sitting like twiddling our thumbs, it's like, do more, do more. It's like, well, okay, if they hadn't done anything in the front half and they signed Pete Alonso this week, like, it is silly how we do that.
It is.
But it would also seem like they were making up for something that they didn't do in December. If they signed Pete Alonso now, it'd be like, oh, people are the Ravens are out of the playoffs. The pressure's on the Orioles to make a splash. It's the same player, it'd probably be the same contract, and they've already done it. Like, I do think it's interesting, and I don't know if this will continue, but their shopping lists have changed, but they've tried to do stuff early, often, and I think it probably hurt them last year that they shopped in the narrow markets that they did. And they're like, we need a right-handed hitting outfielder. Here's Tyler O'Neill. Like,
right.
we need a backup catcher. Here's Gary Sanchez. Cool, box checked, done. But the fact that they were able to do this and get it done makes probably what they do going forward better, because they don't have to do something for the sake of it. They don't have to do something as a reaction to not getting other things done.
Yeah. One more topic I want to get your thoughts on as you seamlessly replace that light bulb is Coby Mayo, because the Royals have 3 right-handed hitting first basemen on their roster right now, as every team should. Odds are, one or more of these guys is going to go soon. When you look at Coby Mayo, I think it's hard for us because we've seen him grow through this organization and become who he is now. And you saw a hot stretch at the end of last year, but overall the stats weren't great last year. How much trade value does Coby Mayo have? Like, could he be the best prospect in a trade to get Mackenzie Gore, say?
No, absolutely not. Okay. Absolutely not. Not for a player like Mackenzie Gore. I think Coby Mayo is a good player, but like, he's not someone right now that the Orioles should or are planning around. That is obvious. And he is not someone that other teams are going to give up significant assets for as a frontline guy. And that's just because the sheen has worn off. And that's because he's shown real warts at the big league level on both sides of the ball. If you had traded him a year ago or a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, like, yeah, maybe you get a Mackenzie Gore type, but that's part of the risk of bringing a dude up to the big league level, right?
Right.
You expose him to failure, and failure, not like the idea of failure, not like the potential of failure, but like actual bad play against big league human beings. I don't think he can lead a package. I think he doesn't fit. I don't think they can enter opening day with him and Ryan Mountcastle on the roster alongside Pete Alonso. And how they go about rectifying that log jam between now and opening day is an interesting thing to keep an eye on. But like, in my mind, being like Coby Mayo for Mackenzie Gore, that's like borderline laughable.
Yeah, but what it does do, though, to me at least, and you can tell me I'm wrong if you want to. I'll try to fight you next time I see you. But if you tell me I'm wrong, I think that what it does is kind of brings their view of him like back closer to the market's view.
Oh my God, yes.
Whereas
100%.
You are not saying. You are not. Thank God, because you're a former college athlete. I don't want that smoke. I just think that they don't have to think about him as like, this is our top prospect, Coby Mayo. This is our dude. This is somebody this is somebody who's going to lead the package for a pitcher. Now he can be a piece in that deal. And, if the Nationals are getting 2 or 2 pitching prospects and an international flyer and Kobe Mayo, that's a conversation that they're probably willing to have. They would be thrilled to have Kobe Mayo on their team for the next 7 years, but it's not like he's going to lead the package to get a player.
So I actually, I agree with that. The Nationals would probably be willing to have him because, like, again, there are some times where teams are like, that's not a player I'm even willing. Like, I'm not interested. We don't think he's that good. Even if it's a guy on the top 100, it's like, I don't think that's a good baseball player at the big league level. I don't want to get into the Kobe Mayo business. Right? That's a real thing. But you're right. I think the Orioles' opinion of their own guys in the past has been higher than the industry's opinion in a lot of circumstances by a pretty definitive amount. And I think that is why at times they've struggled to trade guys to find sort of the middle ground on value as it pertains to, deals. And I think that, but the problem, and I'll push back a little bit, John, is like, if the Orioles were up here on Mayo and the industry was here, it's not like the industry stayed here as he's been bad at the big league level, right? Like, they're both going down.
That's true. Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I think to your point, though, there's a reason why the Orioles' 2 biggest acquisition trades have been with getting pitchers from the Rays, like in terms of scale, because the Rays are pretty easy to work with on that front. They give you a list of players and say, if you satisfy like X number of players on this list, we will do this deal. And the Orioles have been able to do that from like the mid-tier of their prospect list in a way that they weren't able to do in the times when Kobe Mayo would have been like the top prospect and the only guy. And I think that's, I think there's also that disconnect that I think it's important that you mention it, that some teams don't like certain types of players and profiles, and Kobe Mayo is a divisive one, which is interesting considering that like when he was coming up through the minors, it was this like statistical unicorn of like nobody has the swing decisions and hard contact and contact rates that he does. And that's not to say that he's not going to be a good hitter. It's just not what we've seen at the big league level.
Yeah. Well, Jake, can't thank you enough for taking your time out to.
Yes, you can.
Okay.
Thank you so much, man. This has been so
enough.
Great. I don't think we've had a guest like this since I started being on a regular Banner Baseball show.
This is a big get. How do you feel about that? About being our big get?
So I'm at my in-laws right now, and they were like, "You're gonna do an interview wearing that?"
I think you look great.
I was like, "It's not like an interview. It's Paul and John, dude."
Yeah,
just guys being dudes.
I think you look.
Dude, finally, a podcast where bros can talk about sports freely. That's what we need.
We need more 3 white guys talking about sports.
This is our safe space. There can't be more than a dozen podcasts about the Orioles with that meet those demographic criteria. So we're not on the cutting edge. We're near it.
What if we, instead of talking about the Orioles, talk about the Yankees? There are not enough of those.
Oh, and we could call ourselves something like, Talking Yanks.
Yankees. Yeah.
I like that. I like that.
Trademark.
Jake, I already teased it at the top, but everybody can find your stuff at Yahoo Sports, at Cespedes Family Barbecue, of course, on Twitter, Baseball Barbacast, the podcast. Anywhere else? Any other platforms that you find yourselves on these days?
If you want, no, that's really it. I mean, if you want to physically find me, I'm probably at EB's Corner Bar on the intersection of Florida and 6th Street Northwest in Washington, D.C. That's like where you can find me. New bar opened up in my neighborhood. It's outstanding. The owner is an O's fan. The bathroom is plastered with baseball cards. That's my plug. Forget the things I do.
Just go to this bar.
To that bar. The burger slaps. It's hey Jake, where can we find you? You can find me there.
That's so great. That's so great that you have that. I got somebody who moved there recently, and probably to get that place in your life is I'm just incredibly happy for you.
Game changer, absolutely game changer. 8 years in New York City where you could get anything you want at any time, and then immediately finding a place within walking distance of where I live, where I can sit at the bar and talk ball. How lucky are we? How lucky. Hey, thanks for having me on, my friends. I hope to see you. Hey, I'll see you at the Framber Valdez signing press conference, I guess.
Yes. Or whatever. See you at the location formerly known as Dempsey's. for when Framber Valdez holds up his Orioles jersey, and we get another David Rubenstein.
Who's going to ask? Okay, so if the Orioles sign Framber, who asks about him throwing the ball at the catcher?
That's a great question. We'll have our other columnist Kyle Goon do it.
Yeah, that feels like something for Kyle.
It sounds like a good Kyle question.
Yeah. Who's to say? All right, Jake, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. And we'll see you soon.